Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir. Hey, everybody. Bom dia, BD to you. I am Zach Seward. I'm one of the editors at CoinDesk. This is Tristan Ivor. He's the head of strategy at FTX US. And I think behind us we have Sam Bankman-Fried, the CEO of FTX. Hello. Hey, Sam. Can you see the crowd at all?
Nah, I can see you guys. That's something.
Cool, awesome. I can kind of hear you. We're going to do this the best we can. So, where in the world are you joining us from today, Sam?
I am in the Bahamas.
Ooh, how are the Bahamas going?
It's very nice. I'm really glad to be here. I think it's a really big improvement. Just on a number of fronts. I mean, it's one of the only countries with comprehensive crypto regulation, so that's pretty nice.
Yeah, I want to start on the regulatory conversation because, obviously you moved headquarters from Hong Kong to Bahamas. Kind of wanted to get your perspective on the global regulatory context from where you sit.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty messy. And, one of the things which I think is a little bit staggering when you think about it is just the number of countries in the world. There's about 195, depending on exactly who you ask. And that's a lot of different countries. It's a lot of different regulators. And there's very little in terms of global or joint regulatory frameworks right now. And so it's sort of a different answer in every single country, although there are obviously some common themes. What is sort of the variety of those? Well, it's everything from a few countries, the Bahamas is one, that have really rolled out comprehensive frameworks for crypto. And, given sort of real regulatory clarity. That sort of is the gold standard, and it's really a single-digit number of countries, probably a one-hand number of countries. Then there are a number of countries which are sort of working on it and have announced plans to develop frameworks, might have partial frameworks. Today they might have frameworks for spot cryptocurrency, but not derivatives, for instance, is a pretty common state for places to be in. And then there's a number where there just really isn't much sort of explicit framework to speak of. And what often that means is sort of, we end up looking at, well, what is sort of the financial products framework in general? And which pieces of this seem like most applicable to crypto? And when we look at licensing, in some jurisdictions, that means that we get basically the equivalent of a, money transmitter license and a CFD license. Because, you kind of put those together and you got something for spot, you got something for futures. And that sort of is, the best that we have given what that jurisdiction actually offers.
Gotcha. So, same question to you in the U.S. context, Tristan. So, you're FTX US. How would your answer differ from Sam's based on where you operate?
So from the US side, on the regulatory standpoint, as many may know, FTX US is a completely regulated US entity, and the main focus and aim there is to service the US market. And as many also may know, we've recently acquired LedgerX, which is going to really expand our potential offerings there with the DCM, DCO, and SEF licensing. So as FTX.com goes towards its licensing goals, FTX US is also seeking very interesting venues in that pathways as well.
All right, so you touched on the acquisition. It's been a pretty splashy 6 to 8 months for FTX and FTX US, I'd say. You got the Miami Heat thing, you got the biggest funding round in crypto history, esports, Major League Baseball, all sorts of stuff. I'm gonna ask Sam, what's next? How do you top these splashy announcements of the past 6 months? Leak us a little alpha on what's next.
Totally. I mean, I'm really excited about a number of them. But one thing that they haven't really done is, represent sort of live product releases. Some of these obviously have been on the branding side, others on the licensing side. But ultimately, the place we're ultimately trying to get to here is a place where we can offer really world-class products. And so what does that mean? It means, looking at what we can do with, FTX US derivatives, looking what we can do, being able to offer futures in the United States, which no crypto exchanges are doing right now. It's what we can do in terms of making just a great user onboarding experience for sort of retail consumers and growing out that base quite a bit. Looking what we do to, can do to kind of join regulatory frameworks between different asset classes. looking what we can do in terms of making a sort of neobank that works for the users the way that they want it to. I think those are some of the things that I'm most excited about. And, I frankly feel like pretty excited about much of what we've done, but I would feel pretty embarrassed if it didn't come with follow-up in terms of the actual product side.
Yeah, and then I could just add on that the interesting thing on FTX US is, as many may know, derivatives, crypto derivatives are available in the United States through places like CME and ICE, but they're very walled garden products, and you have to have very special access to be able to reach them or trade them. And the interesting thing with the LedgerX acquisition, of course, CFTC withstanding, is that we'll be able to offer some of these products to retail as well and really open up the space, not only from the trading perspective, but also from the access to the markets and data, and actually start trying to bring the traditional markets more into a crypto focus. So very excited for that.
Got it. So you guys are like quants, obviously very data driven. I see, oh, you're not a quant. I guess I'm going to ask this of Sam then. How do you know that all this like branding spending is working, right? You guys have splashed large sums on these sponsorship deals. Is it working? Are you making your money back on these investments?
It's a good question. So let me first try and convince you that it's not working before I try and convince you that it is, or that it might be. Here's one pretty straightforward metric you could use to evaluate the spending that we've been doing. What impact has it had on our revenue this year? And has it made us more revenue than it has cost in expenses? And by that metric, my honest guess is that no, it has not made up its cost. And and so like in terms of net profit take home at the end of the year, I think it'll have been negative. And in fact, I actually don't think that's led to that large of an increase in our user base. Even from like, even given that many of those users will be around for a while. So why do it then? The way that I think of it is I think very differently about marketing versus branding. And I don't know if those are the right words, but they're sort of the words that I use to think about it. When I think of marketing, I think of Facebook ads, Google ads. I think of, paying money to try and get clicks, to try and get people to go register on your website. And it's sort of direct pay for conversion. And that's the kind of thing where you're looking at just like, users and revenue and deposits and things like that. When I think of branding, what I think of is, what does the world think of when they think of FTX? Or do they think of anything at all, or do they just think it's a nonsense string of three letters? And from that perspective, it might not revolutionize in the short term what happens with your actual, usage. And I think it hasn't yet. But if you ask pretty much anyone who knows anything about FTX, they know about our branding. And in fact, just the fact that you asked that question means that it clearly made an impression with you, right? Enough of one that you decided to ask about it. And I think one of the funniest things is when people come up to you and say, Sam, like, I don't get it. It seems so dumb. Like, I heard about you from these like stupid endorsement deals you're running. This seems like a bad ROI. And I'm sort of like, let's retrace that to the point where he said, hey, Sam, I heard about you because of these endorsement deals. And what I think they've been incredibly valuable is really trying to make FTX stand for something in sort of the broader world, not just a crypto ecosystem. And it's done quite a good job at that. We have really, really large reach for them. And these aren't all people who immediately go and create an FTX account as soon as they see, FTX Arena. But it's step one. It's step one. It's really, really helped increase, the role that we play in sort of the public consciousness. And I think a lot of the context for this is, everyone has seen plenty of scammy crypto ads on Facebook. If you see just like an ad for some crypto company you've never heard of, I think the odds are like pretty low that that's going to turn into a conversion for you. And we really are coming from behind there. Coinbase is 30 times our user base. We do not have the mass name recognition and trust that Coinbase has, especially in the US. But we're building up that brand and trying to get to the point where, if someone hears about FTX one more time, he might actually come on and sign up for it.
All right, I want to stick on the marketing question because I think it was last month. I don't know, last week. It all kind of blends together. Sam, you tweeted that you wanted to do a negative value investment to troll the crypto CMOs of the world. And if you were to do that, I'm not thinking that you're going to do that. I think that was kind of a joke. But if you were to do that, what would your negative value investment be?
Oh, it's a good question. And I think sort of the context here was, I mean, we see directly, the things that we do sort of percolating through the crypto ecosystem and sort of duplications of it coming. And, I'm, go for it, right? Like this is, we don't have a monopoly on the ability to try and run campaigns. And yeah, people should be learning from what other players in the space are doing. But I think we often seem to feel like other people are not really understanding why we did it, or what we were thinking when we did, and end up sort of doing it quite differently than I think we would think would be the correct way to do it. And it's sort of fun to hear other people's analysis sometimes of the campaigns that we're doing and contrast that with how we see them. So, all that being said, what would I do? I mean, obviously I wouldn't actually do this, but I think I would take in near neighbors what I think would be a good investment, but actually make it a very bad. But something that sort of like looks like it possibly could be good. And I think one thing there is, I've used this anecdote actually many times. Sorry, I apologize to those who have heard it before, but do you know what bed Dak Prescott sleeps on? I'm guessing the answer is no. In fact, I'm guessing basically no one in the audience does. I've kind of yet to talk to anyone who does. Which is a little bit weird because if you watch football, American football, I think like over half of all football games in the last 2 years have had an ad featuring Dak Prescott advertising sleep number beds. And so theoretically any football fan should know this. In fact, they've probably seen it way more times than they've seen FTX Arena mentioned, or our MLB deal, or the Tom Brady deal. But I basically think it has not had any branding impact at all. And part of that is just as, I don't know, probably a little bit harder to come up with a really engaging brand for a mattress than a crypto company. But I think another piece of this is these are super top heavy. The set of people who hold the world's collective imagination in the palm of their hands is very small. And I think, Tom Brady I think is one of them. I think Giselle is one of them. I think Steph Curry is one of them. I think we've tried to find those people in our partnerships. But there are a lot of people who are almost as talented as those people and have very little sway. And so I think what I would do is just go on a spree of sort of A- tier endorsements that cost half as much as the A-tier endorsements, but conferred effectively no branding or excitement in the average viewer's imagination.
Got it. By the way, if we lose connectivity with you, Tristan is going to recreate the Tom Brady Sam meme. Sam. So if that, just FYI in case that happens.
Yeah.
All right, Tristan, I'm going to pivot to you. FTX US just did a big thing with an NFT marketplace. I guess my question is what are the signals in the market that make you want to launch this big platform? Mm-hmm. Why do you think NFTs are sticking around?
Sure. And before I go into that, I just wanted to add one thing on the endorsement side, and I think it's that now if anyone sees the FTX logo, they know that's FTX, and now all we have to do is make it when people see the FTX logo, that's the place they want to go trade crypto. So it's one more step, but we're in that direction. On the NFT platform side, so the way I look at it is like this. I talk to a lot of friends who aren't in crypto. They want to participate. They ask me questions. They all want to know about Shiba Inu, whatnot. But if you think about it, blockchain, crypto, it takes some time. It takes some studying to understand what's going on and how these coins are ledger entries on the blockchain and what it means to do a transaction, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot of people don't necessarily have financial literacy or haven't thought about these things too much, but everyone understands art to some degree. Everyone feels some resonance with art to some degree. It's very easy to describe to someone that if you hold this token, it's the representation of your ownership over this image or over this piece of art. So I think in that sense, the NFT platform is just a mechanism of onboarding to bringing more people into our space and just expanding the pie for everyone. That was one of the reasons. And ideally, it's a very good customer onboarding mechanism, but as well, in time, it can develop into a bottom line thing. But I think the focus right now is we just want to make cryptocurrency and blockchain more accessible to the masses in general. So I think that's the main thought process behind this.
Gotcha. And then sort of also in the entertainment space, I know, Sam, you guys I think it did like a $100 million like GameFi fund that was announced the other day. Seems to be sort of another potentially new and buzzy thing that may or may not have legs. So I'm curious on your view of why GameFi made sense as an investment.
Totally. So if you think about what are the most engaging things in the world, that's a pretty broad category. I think like bread and chocolate are probably like very close to the top of that list, and I don't exactly think we can get a global chocolate endorsement with like the chemical or whatever. But if you restrict this to like to sort of like things with which one could theoretically partner. I think that like video games are basically the top of the list. If you look at the amount of time that people spend on them, and if you look at how engaged they are when they're playing a video game, it's just sort of off the charts. And if you look at the number of users of these games, it's absolutely massive. They're in the hundreds of millions, sometimes the billions. And so I think in terms of almost anything, games could be a very compelling on-ramp. And then you look at crypto, and I think there's some really natural partnerships there. When you look at NFTs representing in-game collectibles, items, achievements, skins. When you look at crypto-based payments, when you look at having secondary markets for these goods in-game with royalties going back to the game, I basically think it's a really compelling value proposition, and that's pretty exciting. I think that if you told a story, the punchline of which was that 5 years from now, 2/3 of all crypto users had entered this space because of video games, I'd be surprised, but that wouldn't seem impossible to me. And so I think it is possibly going to be an absolutely massive area of growth, the intersection of crypto and gaming.
Sam, I have to ask, personally, are you a gamer, and what's your game of choice?
I am. I'm more than I should be, less than I once was. I play, in terms of video games, I play League of Legends a decent amount. I also play Bughouse, which is a chess variant, offline a decent amount. And in general, I think I like sort of time pressury board games, where there's a clock, you probably dial it pretty short, and the goal is to make the best decisions you can in the time you can, rather than try and grind out for the theoretically optimal ones.
Gotcha. All right, let's shift back to the U.S. real quick. So U.S. regulatory strategy. How are you guys approaching that right now? What does the education effort look like in D.C.? I know we're seeing a lot more activity on the crypto lobbying side lately, and I'm really curious where FTX US and FTX itself stands in that conversation. Whichever you guys
I'll let
take
Sam take that one, because he's been having the conversations himself in DC and other places. But I want to add something, Sam, to the previous question, and it's that NFTs have exploded, right? We've all seen it. It's pretty wild. And right now, it's just this representation of culture. It's kind of this image, this JPEG, this thing without much utility. But the reason I think blockchain gaming is so exciting is because it's the next utility layer for all these NFTs. So there's a multi-billion-dollar market, and now there's actually going to be a way to plug them into something where you can find value through utility. So I think that's what's also very interesting about Web3 gaming. And sorry, go for it, Sam.
Oh, I totally agree with that. In terms of U.S. regulatory stuff, I think that right now, obviously, other than sort of complying with the regulations that exist today, there are sort of two things that we are focusing on the most. The first is licensing, and I think LedgerX, now FTX Derivatives, is probably the single biggest push that we have there, which I'm really, really excited about. But we're investigating other potential licensing operations with the CFTC, with the SEC, and others in the U.S. as well. That's one side of it. And then the other side is basically around education and conversations about what regulatory structures could look like. There already exist regulatory structures for a number of things in crypto in the US, but not everything that you could want. And there are a number of gaps right now, which I think the SEC and others have been quick to point out. And I think like one example of this is the lack of a clear markets regulator for some spot markets in crypto. Another is, that could be the FTC, that could be the SEC, it could be a joint thing. I think another thing is, the lack of oversight of the collateralization of stablecoins. And so one big thing that we've been working on as well has been basically conversations with lawmakers and regulators about what frameworks could look like here for getting more oversight for the crypto industry in a way which helps the industry grow safely. We've written up a few policy pieces on this, which you can find on blog.ftx.com/policy. And we've just engaged with a very large number of conversations, and part of this is giving what thoughts we can, but a lot of this is also listening to what regulators and other key stakeholders have to say about the future, the present and future of crypto regulation in the United States, and making sure that we understand that and that we're able to do what we can to support their efforts.
Got it. So yeah, I guess the other question is like, Sam, obviously the LedgerX acquisition was, as you mentioned, a big thing about the licenses. What other licensing arrangements are you seeking as a company right now?
So, without giving, there's some which, I think are a little bit public. I think, the fact that we are, seeking a broker-dealer license is one of those, to be able to offer traditional equities. But, I think beyond that, there are a number of things which I don't have confidence in, but which we are actively exploring right now. And I think a lot of that looks like, what could a regime look like for spot cryptocurrency markets in the United States? There are a lot of possible options here, and we're exploring licensing for a number of them. We may do one or multiple of those. Some of that also looks at, what about cryptocurrencies that might be securities? What about ones that aren't? What could those regimes look like, and what licenses could apply there? I think that you've seen the SEC and others sort of repeatedly say that they would be really excited to see crypto venues coming in and applying for markets licenses, which I think is pretty reasonable, given that we have markets. And there's a question of figuring out what the right license is. But I think we're investigating the existing CFTC and SEC regimes and maybe applying for licenses in those. And we're also investigating what a modified or hybrid regime might look like. And obviously, in the end, that's all going to come down to regulatory guidance. But we are, having active conversations about it, giving what thoughts we can, and trying to understand where they're coming from, so that we make sure that we're, applying for the right licenses.
Gotcha, sounds good. All right, we're at the Solana conference. We talked about the NFT marketplace that you guys are doing. That's, potentially shot in the arm for Solana NFTs. And clearly through Alameda Research and FTX itself, there's been a lot of investment in the Solana ecosystem from y'all's company. What else about the Solana ecosystem is attractive? What are you guys working on to a crowd of Solana fans here? What's the message? And I'll start with Tristan.
I'll start here, but I think a big part of it at the beginning was the team. Anatoly, Raj, Bartosz, all of these guys are incredible human beings. So not only did they build very, very, very good technology, but I think there was a lot of connection between our team and theirs, which led us to work quite closely with them. Another thing that I don't know if everyone's very aware of, but one of the biggest aids FTX brought to the Solana ecosystem from early on was to create an easy on and off ramp for SPL tokens. A lot of people were able to access the Solana ecosystem natively because they could withdraw as an SPL from FTX or deposit to FTX in SPL and then perhaps withdraw as an ERC20 or other things of that nature. Now in more recent times, this FTX NFT platform where we're going to make it so that you can have all of your NFTs custodied by FTX and you can trade them directly on the platform without latency in that sense, or without having to have these things in escrow if you have them on the blockchain, etc. A lot of investments, but Sam, I'd be curious as well if you have thoughts on this.
Totally. I mean, I'll give sort of some of my hobby horses here, and don't take these as like the only things that matter, the most important things, or what we or any particular parties are going to be working on, necessarily. But they might be. So first of all, just continuing to get better at user interfaces, really, really important. No blockchain has nailed this yet. Second of all, is I think social media on the blockchain. I continue to think that this could be absolutely huge. I think that it solves a lot of existing pain points, which are really coming to the forefront of society right now. And having a composable, cross-platform underlying protocol for encrypted messaging, which then multiple user interfaces could access, I think is an absolutely massive opportunity. I think it's one that's ripe for Solana. I think Solana is the only public chain we see today that has the scale of throughput necessary to potentially be able to house that. And so that's something I'd be really excited for. Excited to see more financial instruments built out on the Solana blockchain. And I think we have seen some of those coming online. And then just, the community continuing to grow as it has been.
Got it. From where you sit, Tristan, are there any other, I think that's interesting, you're sort of talking about sort of the infrastructural elements that are still lacking to a degree. Are there any other pieces of the Solana ecosystem that you'd like to see come around?
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing here, so my bullish case on Solana in general is that it's the first time I've seen a blockchain that you can abstract away that it is a blockchain, in the sense that if you create a beautiful UI UX experience, you put into an app and you hand it to somebody, they could be using it without necessarily knowing it's running on the blockchain. So I think something Armani told me that I think is very, very interesting is right now we're still in the very early days. The primitives are being built out. It's the very initial stages of all of this. Like, the competition hasn't really started, because I think when the competition, or what he told me the competition really starts, is when people take these different pieces that are being built now and make them in a way where they can be mass consumed in the way that we have apps like Tinder, for example, where almost everyone has it, or Instagram, etc. So just aim for that, I think. Don't get stuck in the blockchain crypto ecosystem. This is a technology that I think could actually go out much further in the world.
That's a good point. I was talking to someone who called this concept mullet-fi, and I'm really into it. The mullet, obviously, is business in the front, party in the back. And he was talking about, fintech in the front, DeFi in the back as the mullet-fi concept. Sam, I want to ask you, I'm really curious about your Maps.me investment and some of the projects that are working through that interface. Seems like a pretty good case for mullet-fi there. What are your thoughts on, again, sort of that hybridization of blockchain and slick sort of user-friendly interfaces?
Totally. I mean, I think that there's, a few things that are necessary to get mass adoption. One of them is you need to build the product. Like, you need to build a great product, and if you don't have that, you're going to be shoving things down people's throat. I'm not super, optimistic about that approach. And I think that we're not quite there in terms of anything in DeFi, but we're not that far away. We're getting closer every month. And so I really do think an important part of this is just getting that beautiful user experience, and identifying use cases that are compelling enough that people are going to go out their way to use them. But once you've done that, then you need to get the mass adoption. And when we're talking about mass adoption, some numbers here, all of DeFi put together is 100,000 active users roughly. Maybe 1 million ever. And, some of the largest companies in the world have 1 billion users. And a pretty large company has 100 million. So it's just orders of magnitude bigger. And the sort of adoption that we've seen in crypto, especially in DeFi so far, pales in compared to the adoption that we see with some other applications. And I think that it is one potential way to absolutely supercharge DeFi adoption, is to first build a great product, but then combine it with an already existing massive user base. And many of these user bases, again, are just orders of magnitude bigger than all of DeFi put together so far. And you talk about the adoption so far that we've seen in the industry, but that might just pale in comparison to what a single gigantic platform can bring forward. And so I'm just really really to see that happen, and really excited to see whether it's Maps, whether it's existing social media platforms, existing fintech platforms, or just natural growth, What happens when you try and scale DeFi up from hundreds of thousands, hundreds of millions of users? Because that's where all the upside is, right? Like all the upside is in a world in which the current DeFi user base is inconsequential compared to what the user base ends up being.
Interesting times ahead. Going to be a lot of stories to cover. Well, we're going to wrap it. We're going to wrap there. Thanks for joining us, Tristan and Sam. You're both lovely. Thanks for being here with us. I'm Zach Seward from CoinDesk, and we hope you have a great day.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you.